Oi, oi, hello and welcome to another GG.CO.UK video, again kindly sponsored by Boyle Sports. We have reached a bit of a pinch point in the season, arguably one of the first major milestones. It is December, the month of Christmas, but more importantly, we're under 100 days now until the Cheltenham Festival. We've had some seriously good action on this weekend, lots of Grade 1's been contested. There's been some good bits in the last few weeks, to be fair, but that is going to be true for the next few weeks coming up too. There are an abundance of Grade 1 races coming up over the festive period. So this is a lovely time to draw a line in the sand, take stock of the different divisions, the novices, the novice hurdlers and chasers, and the open company, the open hurdlers, open chasers, to have a look at some Cheltenham Antepost markets to get a bit of a feel with where things are at. Now, please do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like the video. And more importantly this time, comments below. I'm interested to know your guys' thoughts on each of the different divisions. There'll be lots of races that we're going to cover in here. It's going to be a little bit more in depth, but hopefully it won't go on for too long. But it is talking about Cheltenham, so there may be things that need to be said. With that in mind, in the comments below, let me know the ones that you fancy. Whether you agree, disagree, it's all fine. It's a point of opinions, isn't it? Championship racing, especially Cheltenham Festival style, is probably, it's in between two spaces, right? It's probably one of the easiest things to get to when we get near the finals, because we've seen the season's form. We know where the horses are being targeted for, and they will be primed to run 100% on that day. However, this far out, trainers and us can align in the fact that we don't definitely know where the targets are. It is just opinion based. Now, trainers will tell us as much as they, I guess, are able to and as much as they want to, but they won't have hard and fast targets for every horse. There'll be so many markets we'll look at where horses are yet to be seen. We don't know where they're going to go in terms of trips, but it's a nice time in the season to have a look through it, give our early thoughts, and, you know, something to look back on potentially in a couple of months' time when we've seen the festive period been run. When we get near to Dublin Racing Festival Trials Day, it will soon be upon us. And as I say, we're under 100 days now to the Cheltenham Festival. So look, I'm going to pull up odds checker on the screen. You're going to see my face in the corner if you still do want to see that. And then we're going to skim through some of the markets. And I say skim, we'll give them as much attention as they need to, but we just want to get a feel for the prices that are available with, I guess, a few different bookmakers, but more in the fact of what we view and surmise for each of the races. So look, we'll kick off with looking, we'll do it day by day, chronological order. We will obviously cover the different spheres in there, but the Supreme Novices Hurdle took a little bit of a jump, I guess, in the fact that Romeo Coolio was beat in the Raw Bond. He was beaten by Willie Mullins' trained horse, which would typically make you think, oh, maybe that's the one now, but as a horse that's had a lot of summer racing, was rated 138 coming into it after quite a bit of experience. So was a nice enough performance, but I personally wouldn't be saying that that's a performance where anything from the Grade 2 Raw Bond will be winning a Grade 1 at 2 miles at least. So for the Supreme picture, there was an outside chance that Salvatore Mundi could have come here. Willie potentially knew that he had all these, I won't want to say second strings if he rooted them, but horses that might not be near the top of his tree that would still be capable of going up against something like a Romeo Coolio. And of course, that worked. They won the race. It wasn't necessarily the yard's first string, but they got the job done on the day. So that does beg a small question about Salvatore Mundi. He's a horse I've put up in the GG Antepost book column that I've done as my second bet. We put him up at 12 to 1, I think he was. And you can see here, he's top price 10 to 1 with Ladbrokes Coral. Price available in shops and in store, I'm told. But he's as low as 7 and 8 to 1 about there. Now, look, we'll see a blanket line on Bet365 on the left-hand side all day today. I did check their site earlier, and Cheltenham betting seems to have been taken off there. So I don't know whether they're thinking of doing non-mono bet markets or what's going on, but at the moment, you can't really play with Bet365. But look, general 8 to 1 pipe for Salvatore Mundi. My thoughts on the race are still as they were before. Willie Mullins said in his stable tours that he was probably the Supreme horse. Jokingly said that he might need one more run for a Supreme, for a county hurdle. But he name-checked the Gallagher's or Turner's Novices Hurdle now, 2.5 miler for Jasmine Devoe, who would potentially be the main threat from the same yard. So look, I'm quite bland on this one. I want to see Salvatore Mundi out, of course I do, but I think that Salvatore Mundi is the one to beat in the Supreme at the moment. Look, he's a favourite in here, 10 to 1 top price about him. Might not look terrible when it comes to the day, but we've still got a bit of racing to go. There's been a few British horses that have come out that I don't really think we've got too much this side of the sea to particularly be worried about. And as I said, I don't think that was Willie Mullins' best horses running the Raw Bund. So I'm still in the same stance on this one. So I don't think I can really talk about the race much more other than going around about in houses in there. So again, important to let me know your guys' thoughts. There might be some names that have been given some hype or something you've got your eye on or something that I'm just not talking about that you think is relevant for a Supreme. Right, Arkles is definitely going to be an interesting race because it's going to be geared around Ballyburn, I guess. I guess. There's no Turner's Novices Chase this year. That's the 2.5 miler. The Close Brothers, it's not the Close Brothers, but the handicap chase, the Novices handicap chase is back at that trip. So that's a good thing. People wanted that back. But of course, it means you've now got a 3-mile novice chase event, and we've got a 2-mile novice chase event. And you've got a horse like Ballyburn who ran slap bang in the middle of it, made his chase debut, over 2-mile, 3 furlongs. That was a pretty decent debut, wasn't it? For a horse that's highly thought of and well regarded. He did exactly what you'd expect, which has to be a big positive because if we've got high expectations for these types of horses, then happy days to him. I'd sort of look at the question of, do they need to step him up to 3 miles? Like, would he be the type of horse that you think the more fences he goes over or the further he runs, is that going to at any point become an inconvenience? Like, was he jumping bad? Does he not travel well? And no would be the answer. I don't think there'd be any reason why him going over further would be a negative, other than just the typical fact that there would be more obstacles to jump. But I don't think it would be any problem to him because he seems to jump just fine. Now, the Arkle, of course, a speedball type race. You think of Simon Sigg that goes and wins back then Ballymore, and then comes and wins. It might be a Neptune then, but then goes and wins an Arkle after. We know a lot of horses that have won an Arkle or run well in an Arkle do end up staying later down the line, and it'll have the stamina to do it. So you think the market's got it right here. He is about that, but I still am a little bit, I'm in an R in really. I think the price about him 7 to 4, if we definitely knew he was coming here, would be okay. And it wouldn't be any better than that. The fact that we don't know for definite that he comes here, and of course, by all intents and purposes, we think he probably will, it doesn't like jump off the shelf. Now, look, I'm quoting a bottom price there. 9 to 4 you can still get with Ladbrokes and Corals about him. I suppose it might tempt a few people in there. And of course, if he goes off real short, it put you in a good position. But I'm just sat on that fence at the moment where I'm not 100% sure where he's going to end up. And we're going to find out more as the season goes on. Like, he probably is going to be the Arkle horse. He probably is going to be the Arkle type winner. But I don't see any point of getting involved at this particular stage. Now, in the pocket, form of that race has worked out nicely, I think. Was a good chasing debut for that horse. And I think a few people were not wanting to take him on so much, and I don't think he was necessarily forgotten. But the fact that you have a horse that's like this, that doesn't necessarily fulfill the promise we thought they would before, and then in some ways it's delayed doing what they're doing now, you always look a little bit lukewarm with them. Look, we've got Sagino in here as 8 to 1. We'll talk about him as well in the champion hurdle picture, but could still go over fences, let's be honest. When you see the price about him, though, for a horse that's already hurdled him, why would you do it? Why would you not save his novice status? It starts to beg the question about how deep the race is. Lodesud was very impressive at Cheltenham. I was a little bit, I guess, negative of his chance in the fact that as a hurdler, I thought the horses he was going at novice chasing, like, I didn't think he'd have the sort of trajectory improving for a fence as he has done, and he very much has done. Like, he's leapt forward as a chaser. Now, we do see we do see a good few Dan Skelton horses, especially chasers, that are ready to go straight up. They're quite aggressively ridden, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a positive way, in the fact that they've got confidence behind their jumping. He's been very, very good early in the season. He does look this type of horse. Like, you wouldn't be thinking he's going to go out and trip, and you'd think that this would be where he should end up class-wise. I just worry with the early season parts of these ones, whereas that trajectory I talked about, I don't know whether he's almost reading, like, he could potentially be reaching a ceiling already this early in the season. Sounds a mad thing to say for a horse that's got such little experience, but it's just another step up I think I need to see from him to be considering him as a real grade 1 festival winner. Look, we've had good Arkle winners in the past. There's been a couple of ropey Arkles in the last decade, but the horses we've got in here, it looks like it's going to be a good renewal, so we're fine with that. Firefox, I thought, ran well in the Drimmoor. Question if he was a little bit outpaced or not in there. I don't know. Gorgeous Tom was flying from the back, wasn't he? That was semi-eye catching. I don't know whether, I felt like Firefox probably was a 2-miler, and I don't know whether them running him in the Drimmoor going up and trip is a good sign for where they think this horse will sit. Because I liked him a lot. I thought he could be an Arkle type. Now I'm a little bit worried he might be the same as he was over hurdles, where he doesn't quite look the sharpest tool in the box, and he might just find 1 or 2 too good, but he's too good to be a grade 2 horse. So he sits where he sits. Hopefully he's going to go back to 2 miles and he'll take on someone like a Ballyburn, and then we'll get a yardstick to see how close he can get to the horse. Maybe that the race he ran in the Drimmoor, and not to be rude to any other horses in there, maybe he would have been suited to a better race, like better pace and tempo and all that sort of stuff. So he's definitely not out of the picture, but price where he is, you wouldn't want to bet him off the back of that run. Madsborough, of course, another one for Willie Mullins, highly talked about. Where he ends up going is, again, a bit of a guess. So this is where it comes back to the Ballyburn thing. Does deserve to be favourite in here, but would you be betting him at the price? I don't think I could. Slade Still was not very good at jumping fences. Impere Pass's chase debut was okay. I wouldn't say any more than that. And then we're starting to dip down into bigger price ones where, who knows, something in here could figure when it comes nearer the time. But I think we need to have a little bit more water go under the bridge before we form a shape in there. So look, possibly a little bit boring, but we have still got to see a lot of horses. There have been some we've seen already, but there are still some, like, sort of, I guess, competitive races got to go up against each other. Sometimes this start of the season, we've got 3 or 4 that have got unblemished records that we're like, oh, it could be any one of these. I can't wait to see them clash. Whereas it already starts to feel, not that it's falling apart, but we're starting to see chinks in a few horses' armour. Right. Speaking of chinks in armour, Champion Hurdle. This race has now been blown, I guess, wide open with the fact that State Man was beaten by Brighter Days Ahead. Gordon Elliott toyed beforehand saying that she could be a Champion Hurdle horse. Beat State Man over 2 miles and said, no, she'll be going for the Mare's Hurdle. So we'll encompass that race, but that'll be fairly brief. Lossiemouth top price 2-1, but bottom price 6-4 for the Champion Hurdle. Took the scalper Tiupu. Was always going to pounce late. That's pretty much how Tiupu beat Impere Pass last year, although it was much tougher conditions last year. So neither horse lost anything in defeat in there. Lossiemouth, did she really boost her credentials for a Champion Hurdle off the back of that performance? I'm not so sure. But she is a very, 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 very good mare. The mare's allowance, that £7, is massive at the end of the day. And of course, Constitution Hill, we're hopefully going to see at Christmas. And I say, of course, we don't know. But I still think that, obviously, if they get him anywhere near back to it, he's been sort of, I don't know what price he went down to. Was he maybe 7-4, something like that? Like, I think the 9's2 about him. I know he's had an issue, but could potentially be value if we see him on a race course. So he'd be the one coming into Boxing Day type stuff. If there's a final declaration and he does confirm, he's the one that I'd be expecting in the short term to be making a bit of a market move. I guess Lossiemouth and Stateman could face off maybe in the Dublin Racing Festival. There are options at Christmas, but then there are options at Christmas for them to avoid each other as well. I'd like to see that, because I'd like to see Lossiemouth beat Stateman on Irish turf before coming to Cheltenham if she's coming to a Champion Hurdle. But, you know, price-wise, it looks like that's where they're going to head. Sagino's fighting fifth performance was okay, I would say. And I'm a big believer in this horse and a big fan of him. If you look at the way that the weights were, Mystical Power, of course, just didn't run any type of race, but line through that. If you look at the horses that Sagino beat, he's beat a horse that's £9 inferior rated by about 8 lengths, and he was asked to go clear, even though he did do it quite readily. The horse that was ended up going back in third, you've got Chiava and things like that in there. Like, on ratings, they finished where they probably should. So that's a good positive sign for the start of the season for Sagino as a 5-year-old. I think he's got to stay hurdling, but I guess it's what they do with him next, isn't it? Like, were they as blown away with the performance, do you think he actually could win a Champion Hurdle? Because I think on that effort, he's probably run into the 150s. And I know some people might be pushing it, saying he's even better than that. But if he's going to be giving £7 to Lossiemouth, who's going to be pushing 160 as far as I'm concerned, he's still got £10 to go, which he can easily do through the season. But it's a bit of a murky market still. Look, I just don't think we've got a standout contender, which I'm fine with, and I think it's really good for the race. As it stands, I think Lossiemouth's arguably a little bit too short, but she was a ready winner over Tiupu. She was a bit, like, I guess Keane would probably be a part of it, but you'd kind of like to see that over 2.5 when she'll be coming back to 2 miles. She does deserve to be where she is in the market, but I don't think there's a massive eco value in there, because Sagino should be taking a big step forward. Stateman, who knows, could take a big step forward, and she's got to beat him for me to be the best in Ireland, even though she's priced as though she's already beat him. And Constitution Hill could come back. So look, it's a proper Champion Hurdle we've got this year. And we'll remember a few years back when we had Lorena, Apples Jade, Bouverdere going, they were all sort of 5-2, 3-1, 7-2-ish. And Espardeland sprung a shock at as a 5-year-old, about 25-1. 33 is not long out from the event. So I'm not saying there's a chance that could happen, but I mean, sometimes these years when it looks like it's between a few of them, they could end up potentially messing each other up in the race. I don't know. It looks like a proper decent Champion Hurdle again. Moving on to the mare's market, Golden Ace has been said that by Jeremy Scott that she'll go back, so she won't be coming in here. Lossiemouth, we don't know if she'll be coming in here or not, but you look at Brighter Days Ahead at 7-4 for this race for the Ladbrokes and Corals. Betway are in there as well. If I was to question and argue with you and say, look, you're convinced that Lossiemouth goes to the Champion Hurdle, what has Brighter Days Ahead got to beat? Because none of them are going to go up against her. and she's 7-4 top price. So I know it's a quarter of a point shorter than the 2-1 you can get about Lossiemouth for a champion hurdle, but this is not a deep race. There would not be 4 or 5 or 6 horses I could say in here that have genuinely got a chance of slapping her up. Her jump has not been the best, but that defeat of State Man, whichever way you want to spin it, is a defeat of State Man. I know she was poor at Cheltenham in the Mares Novice Hurdle. I know that as well as anybody because I had her, as many people would have done, on her own in multiple bets, things like that. But you got to, I guess, put a line through that performance and trust that it won't happen. Now, I guess caveat with all of that as well is the murky race before with King of Kingsfield and Daddy Longlegs was that she looked a bit messy, sloppy, but just ground out the result. Will she, in a Mares Hurdle, if there's not any depth in there, maybe look a bit more ordinary or maybe get tactically caught or whatever it is? I don't know. But I do believe that she's the one for this, and I think the price that she is where it should be. You'd argue that Lossiemouth has to falter now to be coming into a Mares Hurdle, and that doesn't mean that she couldn't then win the race. But you'd argue she'd be coming in here in not as good a form as she potentially could be. 4-1 about a top price wouldn't stand if the pair of them ran against each other. But I think realistically, Brighter Days Ahead is much more likely to go off odds on and a short price for the Mares Hurdle. Whether you want to get involved this early or this far out, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing it. Plenty of people would have backed her after they talked about chasing for this particular race. But if you've got onto her at a price and early on, regardless of what price you've got, like fair play, she looks like a slip you'd want to hold. Moving on to the Wednesday, the Turners Novices Hurdle. This is the old Gallagher's, Neptune, Ballymore Bar in Bingham, however which way you want to spin it. And I think with this one, we've got to see a bit more from Ireland. We haven't seen Jasmine Deveau out yet. Jalon Duderies looks like a proper weapon of a horse as well and looks the type of mould for Gordon Elliott that would do well in this sphere. The Yellow Clay has been very impressive, but he's such an early season horse. I don't know how long that will sustain for. Owner Mate as well, Wingmen, was a horse that could have gone against him in his first run, didn't, for a stone bruise. And I like Wingmen. I thought he could have got close to the Yellow Clay. So I know that's me using a different horse for comparison when they haven't even gone against each other, but where he sits in the market, I think is about right. But he could end up being popular near the day. But again, you'd be expecting the bar to be a little bit higher than that. And he may end up as a horse that wants to be more in the Bartlett anyway. Potter's Charms in the middle ground of, I don't know what would suit him better. That Valground race was, I don't even think they went that quick, but was a sign to show that Potter's Charm, even though he clearly stays miles, can probably go a reasonable clip. So we would like it in here. But I talked about Ballyburn going from this and then going back to the 2 miles. Like Forheens won this champion hurdlers. Like this is a race where you do have to have quite a bit of pace. I'm not saying Potter's Charm doesn't have that. That would be my stickling point of him, that I think that this race and the Albert Bartlett would still be on the agenda. Like you wouldn't have a preference, I personally wouldn't anyway, to which race that it goes. I don't know if you guys have got different thoughts on that. The new line for the Skeltons is an interesting one because he was impressive in Chepstow and he was pretty good at Newbury as well. I mean, I'm probably being a bit harsh with that, but I don't know if he really does give me the vibes of being a grade 1 winner in these spheres. Like if it's talk about being one of the better British novices, there's no doubt that he is already that, but I'm semi-lukewarm, I guess. And then you move down to some sort of the bigger price ones in here, and I just don't think these are likely to be the ones that will do it. So again, like the markets are priced as they are for a reason, but when you've got 12-1 Jasmine Deveau, again, Ladbrokes Corals, and you've got 14-1 Jalon Duderies, like with a few firms, there is potential that they would be the ones towards the top of the market that are the right ones to be there. Again, you don't have to be involved this early on. I'm not involved in the race as it stands at the moment. It may be the case that these are the ones to focus on when we see them, in especially in more competitive racing. But they look like the obvious ones. And arguably, come the day, you could be looking at a horse that's sub 5-2 to win the race. If both of them go well and both of them do end up here, then they're not going to be 12s and 14s on the day. But look, we still do need to wait a little bit for that race. And as recording this, like I say, we're 100 days away from it. So we're getting closer, but it is only the beginning of December. Right, the Brown Advisory's Novices Chase. This is the race where we'll talk about Ballyburn to a small extent because we've already talked about him. Him and Madsborough, where these two go, is going to be, I guess, crucial on how the markets both form. Take Ballyburn out of either race, then the prices condense in behind. And if you're, I guess, brave enough to make the call on where you think Ballyburn goes, you might be able to find something in behind. Jukebox Man at Newbury was very impressive, very talented, looks real good. I guess the argument lots of people are saying now is that the Turners Novices Chase has gone, we're being starved of Ballyburn versus the Jukebox Mats. That could be Jukebox Man could be a good clash. But look, lots of water to go under the bridge. You want to see the Jukebox Man step on from that, but he's the type of horse at those types of prices that could start to contract. Like, I don't know what was cited after the race for the horse. We've got the Feltham, the Countess Star Novices Chase. Hopefully we see a pretty decent renewal of that this year, and then that sorts the pecking order out of the British horses. But he is the only British horse that is at the top of the markets. There's lots of horses we haven't seen out yet to know where they're going to go. Caldwell Potter was out, wasn't he? And he was very good on that first chasing debut. So he's a 20-1 poke. He could potentially play a part in here. As I said, the same as with the Jukebox Man. I don't know definitely what their confirmed targets would be after, but they're the types of horses we'd like to see go clash. And if there's a bit of a distance put between two of them in the British side of it, we'll split that. But Ireland have potentially got a lot of depth in behind them. The Drimmoor was a good race. I don't think we've seen a Grade 1 winner, at least a Cheltenham Festival winner, come from there. So a lot does still pin on what happens with the horses, such as Dancing City, Masborough, and where Ballyburn goes. But I would think, as it stands at the moment, the market's got it right. The Ballyburn probably goes for an Arkle. We'll just have to see how things peck out after. But this one looks like a much murkier market. And when I talked about the Ballymore, or the Turner's Novices Hurdle, sorry, where we've got the 12-1 and 14-1 at the top of the market. And then here you've got a 5-1 Jolly, and it's 10-1 the two horses in behind. Their prices would then change if Ballyburn wasn't here. The previous race, they still both look relative value. You know, you could probably throw a couple of darts at them. So it's a lot of water to go under the bridge, and it's good looking competitive race there. Right, Champion Chase would be a good one to talk about because there's all sorts of horses that could be going there this year. Tingle Creek's coming up this weekend. John Bond's fully expected to go and dot up in there. Gaelic Warrior's been confirmed for a Champion Chase campaign, being taken out of the King George. I liked him as a potential King George horse. I thought the Feltham, the Novices Chase, would have suited him last year. Doesn't surprise me, though, that when he ran in the Arkle at Cheltenham, we said it from early in the season, if you've got a horse that has a potential to be a bit roguey, you want him on the race course or around the track for as little distance as possible. He ran well in that Arkle. It was a very impressive performance. So you'd be question to think, why would you go for a King George after that just because it's going that way around? And of course, he has been beaten that way around again, hasn't he? He got beat at Punchestown. So don't want to say chinks in his armour, but they messed about with him a little bit last year in terms of distance and running him against good horses. This year should hopefully be a bit more straightforward for him, and they just campaign him as a champion chaser, and that might help him develop again, step forward. Definitely, I would say, John Bond's main rival, like the market would too, but you've got to consider that El Fabiolo seems to have been progressed by John Bond now, and they've had the beating of the two of them, but you can't write him off yet. He's not lost the ability that he showed from earlier before, and of course was a fantastic novice. And Nurgamin could come back. I know age wouldn't particularly be on his side, but it's potential. But it does again look like a race that could be teed up to be 3 or 4 like a Champion Hurdle again, bit of water to go under the bridge, and if they all made it there, it would be competitive. It would be a race well worth winning. But I think as it stands, John Bond has been very progressive season on season, and I think it would be nice to see him go and win Champion Chase. Do you want that as your argument for why you want to back a horse? Not particularly, but I like where everything's sat in here. I couldn't trust Gaelic Warrior. I'd want to wait till nearer the day. It could happen. Anything can happen, obviously, in horse racing, but I can't imagine he'll ever go off short. And even for the Arkle that he did go off relatively short, he was still available 7-2, 4-1 a few days before, like at Final Deck. So a similar thing might happen with him in here. But yeah, it's a market that's priced as it probably should be. We're going to find out a lot with some races coming up soon, Hillyway and things like that. But as it stands at the moment, I don't really see it in. It does look a potentially good renewal, though, with a few going in there. Mares Novices Hurdle, I will quickly peel onto this one just so we can get a view of the market as it stands now. Maureen was very, very, very well touted for a bumper, and I don't know whether that, me being romantic with John Bond last year, whether some of that was to do with what was happening last year, William family and things like that. But look, she's been marked for this early on, been mentioned to be a horse for this. Again, I don't want to be rude to the division because we've got brighter days ahead in there, and we've had some real good prospects in the past, but sometimes it can be an underwhelming division. It would be nice to think that she could be the star that goes and does it, but I would probably rather see her out doing her stuff on the race course and be taking 5-2, 3-1 about her after that than backing a unknown quantity this far out of the prices. Potentially you might be that way inclined, but I think we'll get much more information. It'll be worth the difference in the price. She could be one that goes off real short for this race, couldn't she? But I guess we'll have to see. Where should we move on to next? Ryanair Chase. I mean, this has got the potential to be an absolute banger. People were talking about Gaelic Warrior being an absolute shoe-in for this. But again, look, he's favourite for this race. We'll see this year in, year out in the Ryanair, by the way. He's favourite for a race that he probably will not run in. You've got Gaelic Warrior, El Fabiolo, Spillane's Tower, John Bomb, Elete Tomps, Grey Dawning. All those horses might not come here. Like Elete Tomps probably possibly should. John Bond will be going Champion Chase. Spillane's Tower, you've got to be thinking Gold Cup of him. Grey Dawning, you've got to be thinking Gold Cup. El Fabiolo, Gaelic Warrior, Champion Chase. Although El Fabiolo could slot into the horse that gets beat by the other Irish over 2 miles, and then they do decide to step him up. So he could be interesting. Top price 8-1 Ladbrokes and Corals in there. Found a 50. This could be the type of race for him, I think, but I don't know if that's enough big enough attractive price. You do still get good prices by the time we turn the year as well. Protector had to come back and win it after last year. I don't know. It was a good renewal he won last year, but he ticked all the boxes for it, which is why I put him in there. Fact of File's not going to be coming here. Banbridge, maybe not so much of a Cheltenham horse, is he? And I really didn't like his comeback run, I'll be honest. L'Homme Presse could be an interesting one, but again, we don't really know what they're going to be doing with the horse in terms of confirmed targets later on. They'll deal with that as they move on. The interesting one there is a Nergamine at a big price, because like El Fabiolo, who could falter at 2 miles and then they move him about and trip, a Nergamine could quite easily come into a race like this. Top price 25-1 and as low as 6-1. But those 6-1s, I was going to say surely there must be non-runner, no bet, but they're not when you look at the price of some other things in there. Staggering. But it'd be interesting to see how this race shapes up through the season, but it has historically been a race that you can leave till nearer the time. It sometimes isn't everyone's horse's first choice, which is why so many of these horses do sit in here. Look, as it stands at the moment, if Gaelic Warrior, El Fabiolo, even Spillane's Tower, John Bon, if they decided to come here, then they deserve to be short, but I'd be happy to sit that one out for the time being. Move on to the Stayers Hurdle, because this is a race that the market can't really shake up too much. Look, Tiapu had his run in the Hatton's Grace. They'll be following the same plan as they did last season. Keeping him fresh was the key to him. Go to retain his crown in the Stayers Hurdle. And he was a very good winner of that race, as expected. He's 5-2 top price for this. He was obviously toppled by Lossiemouth. Probably didn't lose anything in defeat, but still did get beat in the process. I know lots of people are saying that he's like one of the bankers of the week and that his price is a very good price because he'll go off short and things, but he was like this sort of price maybe a couple of weeks or a few weeks before the festival as well. And then he obviously did get smashed up for it, but there was a lot of people who wanted to oppose him last year. Look, the depth wasn't there so much last year. I didn't think the depth maybe isn't there this year either, but Strong Leader was good and progressive in his first run. And as much as he might be an angel horse, ran well in that cleave last year, so could do that again. In fact, you've got horses like Lossiemouth priced in it, Imperipass that have gone over fences, is exactly why I put Lucky Place up in the column last week as a bet. 25s with Bet365. As like I say, they're not listed on here because I don't know if they suspended things or not, but he does need to improve an awful lot. But if you look at the prices that are in here for horses, you've got Tiapu who will definitely run, oh God willing, all that sort of stuff. Strong Leaders being targeted toward it, might not definitely run, see how he goes in the cleave, but probably should be here. Then you've got Lucky Blaze, who'd be the next one in the betting. Now, I'm not just saying bet everything that's third in when you've got a small field, but we looked at the Ryanair there that's got a dozen horses that you wouldn't maybe think would even come here. Got horses like I Am Maximus that come priced up in here, and Slade Steel and Dancing City. Look, I don't think they're coming here. Lucky Place looked an interesting one at a price because I think he could go off short. He does need to progress. We'll see what happens in Ascot when they go for the long walk hurdle. Maybe he and Strong Leader will clash against each other, but that's where we'll see a bit of a change in the market. Only thing that can happen with Tiapu is he potentially can just keep shortening and keep shortening and keep shortening and keep shortening. But let's just imagine we get to Cheltenham in March and it's a good ground festival. Not that it probably will be, but I don't worry about him too much on different types of on a quicker ground, I guess. But he has been better on a slower surface. So look, whether you want to get stuck into him or not this far out is entirely up to you, isn't it? When we talked about Brighter Days Ahead being 7-4 from Mares, and the only potential real threat there would be Lossiemouth if she went there. That is a potential threat, isn't it? You look at Tiapu at 5-2 and think, who of these really should be able to beat him? And really, none of them should they? As much as there could be a good pricing behind because they'll have to shorten up, nothing should be able to beat him. And like I say, you look at Lossiemouth, it's 2-1 for a champion hurdle when there are 3 or 4 rivals behind. So look, the argument's there to be made that he's obviously going to go off short on this come the day. And then it's a case of whether you want to tie money up in him or not, or whether you think there could be a fly in the ointment that springs out somewhere. But he did get beat fresh, which has been the key to him in that Hatton's Grace. And again, I'm not saying that means he's now all of a sudden a bad horse. He deserves to be where he is, but I don't know. There's nothing that really lures me in to say I want to slap him up. Maybe he's one to stick in multiples, things like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe because we backed him last year, I've got a different feeling about it. But that's just my stance on it. Triumph Hurdle will be interesting to talk about because Willie de Hoy, everyone said he was going to win the Triumph, and he may well win the Triumph, but was slammed, wasn't he, at the end of the day? The thing I'll say about that was the horse that beat him was given a nice ride. What I don't want to say was hidden the race before, but the race before just got into lots of traffic problems with fallers and things and just could never really show his true colours. And the two of these did pick up and go clear of other horses. Now, I like the Dublin Race Festival. You get the Spring Juvenile, and I feel like that's one of the best pointers. But you saw it when Mr. Adjudicator and Far Class were going against each other. Espoir de Lamb was about in that period. You can get horses that beat each other, and then they'll progress through the season and go beyond them. So look, Willie de Hoy, I don't think will go backwards from that run. Only going to get better. Willie Mullins to talk about his horses will be improving run for run through the season, especially might have needed their first time up run. And it may just be he's a new horse in the yard that he will progress a lot further forward for it. So I definitely wouldn't be writing him off. I would just say that this is a race where I do tend to wait until the spring to find out. We've seen some Christmas form, see lots of the 3-year-olds that will be out by then. We'll see how it starts to stack up, and you're still invariably going to get a reasonable price. If you look at the market in here, there's going to be a fair price to be had for lots of horses. The one that's got the best form so far is East India Doc, and he's a 6-1 poke, and he's not really strengthened up off the back of Willie de Hoy being beat. Like he could be short, like we've seen in some other markets. So I'm always happy to wait for the spring for this one. There'll be some good bits coming out, but definitely wouldn't be writing off Willie de Hoy. I just would have been probably not as confident going into it beforehand. But I say that, I don't want to be poo-pooing other people. I just mean you want to see them go and run and do something first, don't you? We don't want that with all the horses. Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdles is definitely going to be an interesting race. There's a lot of horses every year that will shape as a horse that could go here, might not go here. And I'd always trust the trainers to run the horses in the right race. So if they don't run the Albert Bartlett, then we got it wrong would be my thought process on it. I like Wingman. I talked about him. I like the Yellow Clay. Potter's Charm might end up as this type of horse. Regent Stroll's interesting because he does, they say about he doesn't need to go out and trip. I think he does. He was outpacing that bumper, but I don't know. It's a bit of a mixed signal. And again, I just want to see a lot more racing from this particular division. Now, look, there's been big prize winners on the day. I know more recent years it's been a bit, I don't want to say easy to find winners, but like the markets have shortened up a lot more. But you can wait until pretty much the week of the festival to find an Albert Bartlett race. So there might be some that have it targeted a long time out, but we'll see how it goes after. Sometimes you could get a horse that would be good enough to win a Turner's originally, doesn't want to go there this year, ends up shaping as a horse like this and just gets the job done and goes and wins it. So I'd be inclined to leave that one as it is at the moment. The Gold Cup market will change. That's a nice, easy way to say it. Christmas period's going to be mad this year because we've got a King George that's, I say, open. It's relatively open because we've got Willie Mullins taking a lot of his horses away from the division. But we've also got the Savills Chase over in Ireland, where there is going to be some seriously competitive racing, and there'll be a lot of horses from that John Durkan facing up against each other now. Look, Monty Star's a horse that ran behind Factor Foul, behind Spillane's Tower, and the John Durkan form would suggest that Monty Star isn't that far off those horses. 20-1 poke probably would sit out as one that looks interesting. I know the way you're thinking, price-wise, is I'm not want to say an overreaction, but it's probably a bit of an interesting one. The John Durkan run, you just have to just put a line for it. It's just the start of the season, I guess. Grey Dawning, I don't know about him really staying that far, and it was attritional ground, and he did do well to get to the head of the front, but against the Irish, I don't know. Yeah, so it's a bit of a strange one. I put Jerry Colomb up, the Antepost column, as the first bet. 16-1 he is now. Of course, he got beat in that Down Royal Champion Chase where didn't look himself, did he? Gordon said that he's found a couple of niggly things. Their plan will be to go to Savills and then come to Cheltenham. He's run really well at Cheltenham. Thought his run last year was good. I made the case for that he could have actually done a lot better than he did. And he's got to bridge the gap with Galopin Des Champs there, but obviously Galopin Des Champs did get beaten the John Durkan, but I thought he ran just as well as the winner did. Look, they're all priced probably where they should be. I still think there's a bit about Jerry Colomb, but I've got that because I've already put him up. It's a good competitive race. We'll have to see how things progress. But over the Christmas period, we should find out a lot more. There's the race at Tramore as well, isn't there, where Willie will probably send something to go run there. Then potentially Dublin Racing Festival, we might find out a little bit more from that side of the sea for things. But like, it's always going to be a competitive bet, and this is probably one that you could savour and wait a little bit because you want to get luck. You want to make sure the horses make it there for the festival. You want to make sure that they make it there on the ground that they want. And being a Gold Cup, you're probably going to get bigger than 3 places given on the day. It'll be a good sized field. So probably a sit and wait job, I'd say. people that are big fans of Factifile were probably on at bigger prices already, but may want to just keep steaming on him. It's going to be very hard for Galopin Des Champs to come in and do it again, but it's definitely not out of the question. But if you were to take any one or two of horses out of this market, let's say Fast or Slow missed it, or Galopin missed it, or Factifile missed it, or Jerry Colon went out, or anything like that, there's going to be big contractions around that. So there's a lot of influence that could happen in the market off of the race course. So cracking race, another one that I'd probably prefer. I say probably, I would prefer to leave till nearer the time. Mares Chase will quickly do this one because I've made you sit through this long. We might as well just chuck a little two-penneth in here anyway. Like a minefield of a market, isn't it? They've changed the conditions of the Mares Chase race with the penalty systems. They'll all be running off the same sort of stuff. There's cases to be made again for the first few within the betting in there, and it does depend on conditions and how things come up. Like Limerick Lace is versatile in terms of trip, running a national and goes and wins this race, but it did come up bad ground at the festival, and that's probably why she won, I'd say. But it's interesting. Impervious could come back to be special again. We've got horses that will be novice Mares Chasers that will go into this particular division. Eye-opening in the fact that this is what the timestamp is at the moment, but again, not a race I'm keen to get involved in. And again, Limerick Lace that was well backed on the day, week before, would have been available at 7-2, 4-1, I think, for the race anyway. So definitely one to sit tight on at the moment, from my perspective anyway. That's the way that I'd view that personally. So look, that wraps up this video. Look, I know it's a long one. I know it's a bit of a slog, but I think it's worth talking about it. I think it's worth getting a little timestamp in there. I'll leave it as that. As I say, drop your comments below of any thoughts you've got with particular races or horses that I've talked about. Where, like I say, it's a game of opinion. So it's not about anyone being right or wrong. You just share what things are in there. Or if I've said anything that I have been mistaken and misquoted, or I've missed a bit of news, then again, please feel free to correct me on that. Make sure you've liked the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. As I say, we've got a big action-packed festive period coming up for some good racing. We've got weekend watches coming out on the Thursday. There'll be a few trends videos coming out on the Sunday, back to normal. And then at some point in the new year, I'll give us a bit of a review of the Christmas period covering the grey ones. It won't be as long as this, but it will be another turning point towards Cheltenham. It may be a case that I could give us a Cheltenham Festival lucky 15. So again, thanks for the support. I will see you guys again very soon.